And running the ones and twos today, new Joey.
New Joey. Joey too.
Someone send a super chat saying show Joey.
Show Joey.
So we can.
I'm not prepared to do that yet.
No pressure, Joey, but the last one, Sabertooth the beer halfway through the season.
Yeah.
That's fair.
You have big expectations.
Big
friend.
Joey shoes to fill.
Big momentum.
If
PCA day.
Actually, Joey's shoes weren't that big.
If you tuned into our last watch along before the season ended, Joey actually sat on the set with me and Luke and complained about the Cubs instead of watching the game. That's essentially what that watch along was.
That's right.
Oh, was it? That's
yeah.
But Joey joined in, I think, around the 5th inning, and he was here until the end of the game. We had a great conversation. It's a huge Cubs fan, which is good.
Yeah.
Good start.
And when you see Joey, he does Big Ten podcast, right?
Yeah.
You hear about the Big Ten a lot. And every time, I'm going to have a Luke-alike put together on this. They look so much alike they could be twins. He is Ryan Dempster. When Joey walks in, the first face I go, oh, Demp is here. And then I'm like, no, it's new Joey. No, am I wrong? Take a look. Look one more time. Ryan Demp, he's got way better hair. I'm going to start wearing
high socks.
He got way better hair.
He needs like the reddish hair to peek in a little bit.
I think you got to start wearing your readers a little bit more.
Readers don't help with looking at someone across the room. His facial features tell me Ryan Dempster. Anyways, we're going to do our grades again today. I was going to tell you guys that I think one of the funniest things is how long ago did we do the Hap and Hoyer grades?
Last week.
It's been over a week, right?
Yeah.
Well, Hoyer was 2 weeks ago, right?
2 weeks ago now? Hoyer was the
that
first one we
week?
did?
No, Hoyer was last week because that's when Megan
first
Monroe
day.
was here. Yeah.
You're right. That was only last
We did Hap.
It just feels like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Somehow I'm included in a Twitter beef between people arguing about the grades, and it's still going. Every time I open my Twitter, it's just like I'm included in this with 10 other people, and these people are just yelling at each other on Twitter about it.
Yeah, no,
I did
over our ridiculous grade.
Mine are finally slowing down, but I had that for Hap and I had that for Hoyer as well.
I did us a favor by not tagging all three of us over the weekend.
Thankfully.
I went back and looked. I didn't look at the replies because, why would I do that for my mental health? But there was over 100 replies to the graphic about Horner, us giving him a B or a B+ like I did. But then the one we put up, I put the one up for Steele on Sunday. Mm-hmm. That one, not so much. No, there's no slander or there isn't a lot of engagement on it.
I don't think it's a super debatable grade.
Yeah,
right. It's
not
quite an A, but you could make it an A.
I also said in the caption that he gave himself a B in the YouTube chat. So what do you give him? You know,
right.
I was higher on his season than he was.
Yeah,
that's right.
So, we've definitely got a lot of backlash from the Hoyer stuff, the Hap one, the Horner one.
Yeah,
those are probably the three we got the most backlash for.
Hap and Hoyer so far have been the ones that I just can't get over. People are still commenting. I got into a civil conversation explaining my grade about Hoyer to somebody on Twitter who wanted to give Hoyer a much higher grade, and I was like, well,
if you want
the results, I don't know. This is a 2024 grade. I'm not grading him on his job overall as a GM. Right. I'm not grading him on what it might be next year. It's strictly the moves he made this season.
Mostly the people who are mad are people who didn't even listen to the show.
Right. I think if you listen to the podcast, we explained pretty well why each of us gave the grades. Today, we have two more, Javier Assad and Pete Crow-Armstrong, which I think PCA might get some interesting reaction back and forth as well. Hey, did you guys see Soto homered?
Yeah.
Future Cub Juan Soto?
Yeah. Future Cub. That's,
I saw all the people. I saw all of Cubs Twitter. Oh, future Cub. I'm like, yeah.
Wait, I don't know where.
Guess you didn't get the Ricketts letter.
Yeah.
I saw it on I saw on Twitter. I don't know who put it out, but must have been at the Yankees game, and someone behind home plate I think had instead of a sign about Soto, it was a big check. It was $600 million made out to Juan Soto or whatever. I'm like, you guys should have done that at the takeover or
we're lucky we're lucky Braggs can break out a crayon box with those busted up knees, actually get him to print out a check.
I'm the one who made the Soto sign.
Well then you are to blame.
Yeah,
sure, but I'm not the artist that Greg Braggs is. So whatever. I tried to do my best.
Right.
I did bring it to the very last Friday 120 Club of the Year too, and Juan Soto wasn't even there. I was just doing my part as a fan to be like to tell the Cubs that we wanted Juan Soto. So,
what if Braggs takes all his money from the Brewers and starts a GoFundMe and puts that cash in there?
That'd be sick.
Be a nice way to start things. Mm-hmm. Here, Tom, I'd like to be a millionaire like you, but I'm just going to give it to you so you can
give it to Juan Soto.
Give it to Juan Soto. And Rizzo is back 1 for 3. Niran, hello. Godfather's here saying Assad is a C-. Just throwing around the C-minuses, Godfather. No, everybody gets a C.
Everyone gets a C or an F.
Everybody gets a B.
Niran, why does he only say hi to you?
I saw Becky's here.
I'm a little hurt.
Yeah, Niran didn't say hi to me. I don't think me and Niran ever disagree on anything.
I know me and Niran disagree on stuff, but we have talked in person before. Come on, man.
Yeah, multiple times.
We're friends.
That's like sometimes when Becky says like Luke and Cody, you guys are the best, and I'm just sitting here like, what?
Luke and Cody are nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about me? What am I, chop liver over here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anyway,
anything you've been watching in those early games of the championship series?
Well, we've talked a little bit about him, or I've mentioned him a few times, but Mark Vientos yesterday, like going back to what we were talking about about going over projections and stuff. I mean, I don't even have to look at his Fangraphs page. That guy has absolutely outperformed anything the Mets expected this year, and he's now cemented himself as like a core piece of their team going forward. And that's what the Cubs need. Like, if they're going to go like this developmental route and not sign a guy like Juan Soto, they really do need some guys to emerge as like those potential future stars like they did in 15 and 16. Like, that's the only way that it'll work if you're not going to go give Juan Soto some money. And I bring that up because we're going to talk about PCA today a lot, but a guy like Vientos has really impressed me for the Mets, and I just dream of the Cubs having a guy like that next year. That like a guy that just breaks out like that and cements himself as a real future like potential star.
Well, and like Vientos didn't even make the opening day roster for the Mets. Like, he got optioned down to Syracuse March 25th, came back up about a month later for 3 days, and then got optioned back down for another 2 weeks. So it wasn't until mid-May that he came back up and stayed up. Like Cody said, like, he's a guy that's just kind of come on throughout the year. He's 24 years old, I believe, and he's hitting second in the lineup for a National League Championship Series team. It's a huge grand slam, and it was Lindor had just gotten walked, right? Intentionally walked. That was the same sequence.
I believe so.
So like, you intentionally walk Lindor, who's obviously the Mets' best hitter, and maybe that puts a little bit of a chip on Vientos' shoulder, and then obviously hits a grand slam, and you're like, wow, that's a pretty good young player that the Mets have gotten going for him, and yeah, like that's, again, we'll talk about it a million times with things that Jed says about guys outperforming projections and stuff like that. And of course you need stars. Of course you need, guys that are going to give you a high floor. You're expecting really, really good years year in, year out. Of course you need that. We also need guys to emerge, as Cody said. You need guys to outperform projections, or else that's just how you have the kind of seasons that like the Mets are having right now. That's how you got to go about it. And like, you got to have a balance of both somehow. And that's obviously the goal, and like how we're looking at the Cubs, like how can they get to that level where they have both?
Yeah. So
you guys notice that the ceiling is leaking in here?
Yeah, I did notice that.
I wonder if you could see it on
drip.
We're still a startup over here.
That'd be so great
folks.
if you could see on camera the water just dripping in front of us. I think it's slightly. Oh, I think you might potentially be able to see it. I'm gonna look for it.
But I think other things related to the LCS so far. I mean,
you know what I would say about Vientos though, real quick?
Sure.
Is it's the thing that I like to talk about all the time. Just because it's happening now doesn't mean it's going to happen for sure next year and the year after and the year after that. Like, I do love the experience of it happening in the postseason specifically for him. I think that's got a little more weight than if he was just doing it in September or something. But
I'm not even really disagreeing with you, but this is just to push back a little or play devil's advocate. Those are like, when you see things like what Mark Vientos is doing, like those are things that I feel like is okay for front offices to roll the dice on the following year.
Oh, yeah.
Let's use Michael Busch as an example here. Like, Michael Busch developed into a really great defensive first baseman this year. He hit 20-plus homers like I thought that he would. And he gave you great at bats. He walked a lot. Like, he honestly, for me, he ended up being everything that I thought he would be. And now it's like, how do you build off that? How do you get better? Like, sure, he could completely fall off next year, but it's similar to like Christopher Morel this year. No one saw that, and so I don't really even fault the Cubs really for failing to move Christopher Morel earlier, because it's like that guy was 24, 25 years old with raw power and hit almost 30 bombs in 2023. To see what happened this year, I don't think anyone could have predicted that. Now, obviously, front offices, that's how they get paid, knowing these things in some aspects. But I think also if you choose to roll the dice on it and see if he can do it again, it's okay. It's just that you can't do it with the entire team. Like, right. It feels like with what this Cubs front office has done, they had 3 or 4 different experiments entering opening day for a team that had expectations to make the playoffs, whether that was Morel at third base, whether it was Busch at first base.
Amaya at catcher.
Amaya at catcher, you know? There's
PCA eventually at center field.
Sure, yeah. And it's like, when you have expectations to make the playoffs, that's just not, like, you can have 1 or 2 experiments, I guess, depending on who's on your roster. But with what's on this Cubs roster, they really couldn't afford to have that many experiments. And if all of them would have panned out, I would have given the front office all the credit in the world. But also, like, some good happened and some bad happened. Busch turned into a pro, and Morel really fell off, you know? And, it's just like that's the nature of, like, the league, I guess. It's not just the Cubs where those types of things are happening, but it's also how are you going to now right the ship? And the Cubs have they're under a lot of pressure right now to right the ship.
You're right about the Morel thing too. Is it's not if he would have blossomed into the player they thought by going with the new approach and getting better at third base, a team that was searching desperately for a superstar, they had to know that. You can't let a guy that at least you could see that potential there. Now, he may never reach it, but you can't give up too soon on that guy.
Yeah.
So that I don't have a problem with them looking for that. Now, even if with our eyes we may say it wasn't there, I think there's enough for you to look at the power and stuff and say, man, they'd be crazy to give up on before they get at least another half season or another season out of what they're looking for. So I agree with you. I don't think it was absurd that they did it, but the problem is that they did it at 3, 4, maybe 5 positions in a division that they should be winning pretty easily in the first place. All right, we are going to grade the ass man, Javier Assad, when we come back, and then Pete Crow-Armstrong. But first, one of our great sponsors I want to tell you about, and I really want to tell you about these guys. I got to tell you about this game-changing product I use. Before a night out with drinks, it's called pre-alcohol. Let's face it, after a night with drinks, I don't bounce back the next day like I used to. I'm in my 50s. I have to make a choice. I can either have a great night or a great next day. That is until I found pre-alcohol. I feel like we needed a sound effect there. Bum, 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 bum. Let me tell you, if there's a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after a night of drinking, it's with pre-alcohol. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's there to blame for your rough next day sometimes. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Every time I have a pre-alcohol before drinks, I notice a difference the next day. Even after a night out, I can confidently plan on tomorrow without worry. I kept hearing about pre-alcohol and wondered what it was actually like. Now I've tried it, and I believe the hype. And with their GMO technology, they will release different products that help address toxic byproducts of modern living in the gut. Go to zbiotics.com/CHGO Cubs to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use the code CHGO Cubs at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Again, the code CHGO Cubs.
I needed some of that on Sunday.
Got to start with it.
I had a wedding on Saturday.
Yeah.
So I needed some of that on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before the wedding.
Oh man.
Yeah. But he hit 50.
What I did have though was Prize Picks on Sunday. Okay. I got Prize Picks every day, actually. Thank God. It's the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play. Example, Jordan Mason, last Thursday on Thursday Night Football, I believe the line they had was 80.5 yards, 85.5 yards, somewhere more or less, yes. Mm-hmm. The line was around that. And he got hurt in the middle of the game, and because Prize Picks has their insurance policy, you didn't lose your entry because of that. So that's one of the cool things about it. It's huge. It saves your day, in my opinion, all right? So sign up today and get $50 instantly. When you play $5, you don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. They offer weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday.
Nice.
Today, right? Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. What are you waiting for, folks? They give you all the good stuff, all right? Download the app today and use code CHGO to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CHGO to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Oh, yeah.
Brother.
By the way, Dansby Swanson and Ian Happ, finalists for Gold Gloves.
Yeah.
Again.
Are we surprised that Horner's not in there?
Yeah, probably. I haven't looked at the defensive numbers at second base, but I mean, we know that Horner
put up my grade. Gonna have to change my grade now
because he didn't make
I thought he'd at least be in the running for it.
I thought he would at least be a finalist too.
No, I think defensively he still gave you exactly what you kind of expected from him on defense. I know there was some
early in the year.
There. Yeah, right.
If there was any time of the year where Swanson and Horner struggled defensively,
it was earlier in the year. Yeah. And
but not a finalist. Like when we did that podcast and I was giving out my grade, we hang our hat on for the positives for him, elite defense. And now you're telling me he's not even a finalist for a Gold Glove.
Yeah, I don't know. But I will say
interesting.
I remember sitting when we were talking about Swanson early in the year, and I remember, not to toot my own horn, but I remember sitting here and saying, like, people were concerned about Swanson's defense. I'm like, there were fair concerns because it wasn't looking up to Swanson's standards. But I remember sitting here like, we are going to be sitting here at the end of the year, and Dansby Swanson is going to be in the Gold Glove conversation. I'm very confident in that. And look, we're here 6 months later, and he's back in the Gold Glove finalist conversation. Could potentially three-peat at shortstop in the National League. I understood the early concerns when they didn't look as great, when he didn't look as great defensively as you expected from him coming into the year. But that's why it's such a long season. It's when it's in April, I was like, by the end of September, you'd expect a guy like Dansby Swanson to have produced a Dansby Swanson defensive season, and that's what he did. And I think he's got a really good shot. I think, was it Tovar and Mason Wynn? Obviously have their Ezekiel Tovar from the Rockies and Mason Wynn of the Cardinals. Obviously both have their solid cases in there. There's some different numbers that Ezekiel Tovar beat Swanson in. There's some numbers that Mason Wynn beat Swanson in. There's some numbers that Dansby beats them both in. So I can't say for sure that Swanson is going to win this season, but I am I'm happy to say that I was right and that he would be back in the Gold Glove conversation.
Credit to you, and humble of you to admit that you were right.
Absolutely. I said I wasn't trying to toot my own horn.
Right.
I remember these conversations back in April, and my whole thing was not that I even really disagree with you. My whole thing was that he was just not living up to what his standard was. And so that was my whole thing is like, dude, you're struggling at the plate. You have to at least be the elite defensive player that you have shown to be for not just one, but multiple years. So that was my whole thing, right? It's not that I didn't think he would get back to it. It's just more about like, this team is built on defense. And in April, this team stunk defensively. It's not even just Swanson. It was as a whole, that team, like it's you look back at this team back in April, what they went like 18-12, March and April. And you can make the argument that they probably should have won 20 games at least in April if A, the ALLCITY wasn't bad, and B, if their defense was better. And so, not that it matters now, not that it would have changed how May or June went, but you can very easily go back to April and find games that they should have won, but because of their own doing, they lost. So, that's how I feel about that going back to what you were saying about Swanson early in the year. Like, I don't disagree. It's just more about there's a standard that he set for himself, and he wasn't living up to it. So I was letting him know. As far as Ian Happ, though, he, 3 years in a row?
This would be 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People said he took a step back.
If he gets a Gold Glove, I'd have to change my grade again. All right, I did something. Let's get to Javier Assad, and I did something so bold.
Oh, credit to you.
I'm about to do something so bold that I don't think anybody's probably ever done it before. I looked at 0 stats for this grade.
Oh,
nice.
This is strictly my old eyeballs.
Straight vibes.
Looking at the games.
Metrics.
Stucky stats, if you will, right? Just what the old eye see. And they're fine unless I'm trying to read it on an iPhone right up against my face. The eye sees what I can see. I can see that in slow motion, like John Wick. I can see that water droplet coming down into the bucket. I see it like Spidey senses. I can sense it coming down in the air. I can feel it going splash. Here's what I thought about Assad. I gave him B-. And there's going to be people that are going to say, "Oh, come on, he's average at best." I know what you're saying. He's an if I'm comparing Javier Assad to maybe every pitcher in baseball, sure, he's kind of average. He's mid, right? He's a little more mid than. However, he did everything they expected. You want to talk about projections? I don't know what the projection numbers were beforehand. If you'd have told me this was the season he was going to have and he was going to have to fill in, and at one point early in the season with Steele out, this guy would be holding it to get 18-12. That's not happening without Javier Assad being one of the top ERA pitchers in all of baseball early in the season.
Months, yeah.
First couple months, right? Yeah. Like, did it all finish perfectly? No. Is he a 7-inning guy? No, he's not most of the time. Is there room for improvement? Yes. But if you'd say just average, which was my first thought was give him a C. It was average. No, he did everything they expected him to be. It wasn't just like Neris. They weren't all ideal situations for him. And maybe he is your 5th starter, or maybe he does become a really good piece of the bullpen. The point is, he is a good pitcher. He did a nice job, and he did more than he was expected to do for this team. So that's why I went just above a C, and I went B-.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I went with B- for him as well. If you just look at the raw numbers, I mean, he had a 3.73 ERA. That's pretty good. And I was trying to look up the number. It was like a certain amount of guys had pitched 140 innings with, like Assad was obviously one of them in baseball, and he was in the top half at least. I'm going to try to find that number while I say other things. I think the biggest thing for me, and I was kind of with you, it was like C-ish range was where I kind of, at first, just first thinking about Assad, was where I kind of went to. And I think it would have been fair to give him a C. Like, I think he didn't have like a super great year. He had a good year. I think when I look at and I go back to when I talked about giving like Steele and Happ B+, right? Like, those guys had really, really good seasons. but they didn't necessarily exceed my expectations. Those two guys, right? That's why I couldn't give them into the A range. They were B plus, and you know, maybe a little bit better seasons get them into that A range, but they didn't necessarily exceed my expectations, and so I couldn't get them to that next tier. Assad was a guy that I don't think any of us really expected him to stay in the rotation the entire year. I mean, to be fair, he wasn't even, if it had not been for Tyone getting hurt to start the year, he may not have been in the rotation on opening day. I think we all kind of sat here and we're like, this guy's going to be a really good, longer reliever, maybe higher leverage inning reliever for the Cubs, and thought that was a pretty good role for him. I think he's had, success in there before. I actually think going into this year, he'd had better numbers as a starter than as a reliever, but the way things were shaping up, it felt like he was going to go in the bullpen, and you thought he'd be solid out of the bullpen. He goes and starts the entire year. He pitched 29 times, all were starts. Again, like I said, 3.73 ERA, which I'm getting that number right now, would be, I lost it. I'll find it again. But he just again, it comes down to me for expectations, I guess, and I didn't expect him to do this. I didn't expect him to be what he was this season. Certainly not, especially early in the year, Luke, like you mentioned, he was battling Shota for like the ERA
top
title,
3 in ERA
first month or so, right?
Graphics up.
Yeah. Yeah. He was, so out of 81 starters that pitched 140 innings this year, or he had a 3.73 ERA. That was 40th among those guys. Right behind Brady Singer, Freddie Peralta, Zach Gallen, Luis Castillo.
Right behind Zach Gallen.
Yeah, like right behind those guys. That's all in the same range, and ahead of guys like, that's kind of where you get to like the Jose Quintana, Nathan Eovaldi, Tyler Anderson, like in that range. And again, like you didn't expect him to necessarily do that. Now I will say, we're grading him on 2024, and when the year is over, all you can go on is the results, right? And he put up good results. There are underlying numbers that still concern me. His strikeout rate isn't very high. His expected ERA was pretty high, right? Like there are numbers in there that, like, you look at his StatCast page, his expected ERA was in the 10th percentile, expected batting average 17th percentile, right? Didn't get a lot of chase, didn't get a lot of whiffs. Like, those are numbers that still concern me moving forward. I don't know that I for sure say he's a B- pitcher for the rest of his career, but when we're grading on 2024 and we're basing it on 2024, all we have to go by is the numbers he put up, and his numbers were pretty solid overall, and better than I expected in a role I didn't expect him to have for an entire season. And that's why, again, like I said, I started off thinking C+ when I first heard Assad, and then I'm like, he really did exceed my expectations of what I thought he was going to be this year. And he was a big part of, again, when the starting pitching suffered some injuries early in the year, like, he was a big part of keeping some stability in there, right? He made 29 starts this year. I think his only missed time was in June, right? Or July, right before the All-Star break, whatever, like right somewhere right before the end of the first half. But he was a pretty solid stabilizing force. He wasn't this elite pitcher the entire season, but I thought he stabilized that rotation when it needed it, and again, exceeded my expectations for what I thought for him going into the year.
Here's a tease. Cody Delmendo's grade for Javier Assad is coming up next.
You'll want to wait around for this.
But first,
so you can all be mad.
With Empire Today, you get to shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring. So, of course, there's copycats, but Empire cannot be beaten on quality, service, and speed, so competitors then try to advertise low-quality products that Empire's not even going to try to carry. Empire's not going to promise you the lowest prices, because anybody that does that is putting flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in their home. They keep shopping for floors simple with a curated product selection. Empire's philosophy is to help you find what you need, not overwhelm you with 1,000 choices and substitutes. What they keep out of their selection is just as important as what they put in. They also have a virtual floor designer. Great way to see how the new floors look in any space. All you do is snap a picture and instantly see how the new floors will look in your room. Shopping for floors at a big box store, that can be frustrating. You might be getting the person that was working in plumbing yesterday. Good luck with that. Flush. Service your own warranties. That's what they do. if an issue does arise, just call Empire. They service all the warranties themselves. You don't have to track down the manufacturer's phone number. So schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when you use the promo code CHGO. Those 4 letters, CHGO, get you $350 off. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/CHGO for details.
It's you.
Ryan, would you like to tell us about Chevy?
I thought we were.
Or are you still thinking about Javier Assad?
I'm still thinking about Javier Assad.
You can't stop thinking about Javier Assad.
Let me tell you guys about Chevy. Say Prost to bigger and better savings on your next vehicle because Cartoberfest is going on now at Ray Chevrolet. Head in today to shop their huge selection of new Chevy models at new low prices. Right now, take $3,000 and up to $12,000 off MSRP on most new Chevy models, or cruise through fall your own way and shop over 125 of their vehicles priced under $20,000. As one of the top-selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest, you'll always be able to shop one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories. Visit our partner this October at their location on Route 12 in Fox Lake or at raychevrolet.com. And if you've heard of Ray Chevrolet, then you've also heard of Ray's Price Promise. They're guaranteed to make your next vehicle more affordable than ever with no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees ever. That means the incredible prices we're talking about now, you can expect to see the very same when you shop Ray Chevy in-store or online. Shop Cartoberfest all month long by visiting Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. They've been serving the community since 1963. Together, let's drive.
Okay,
here we go. Ready? Cody Delmendo with the Ass Man grade. So far, Godfather's already been upset with B-, B-.
Yeah, he says, how did we miss the playoffs with all these good grades? Confusing. And I mean, I've been yelled at online for the last week and a half about giving Jed Hoyer an F. I gave Kyle Hendricks an F. I gave third base an F.
Well, those sound like good grades.
Like, I don't,
for me.
Can I interject? Is a B- a good grade? Does that say more about Godfather?
Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute, new Joey. There's nothing wrong with a B- because I got a lot of them.
I got a lot of them too.
And that said, MIT, Northwestern, and Harvard weren't calling me.
Yeah. I also think a lot of B's and C's and like that kind of tells you what we've said about this
average.
team.
Yeah, they're an average team.
The team's got a lot of good players. It wasn't a great team, which you needed to be a pretty great team to make the playoffs this year. I think that's kind of the point of what we've been saying about this season overall.
About 500, but in the middle. All right, sorry. Go ahead,
Cody. I am trying to use Godfather's comment about missing the playoffs with the good grades to kind of go into this. And like this, Javier Assad is a great example of someone that I think you can argue went over their projection, even though he didn't hit the innings limit, I guess, or the innings that Fangraphs projected, but his ERA was lower than what Fangraphs projected for the year. And there's certain circumstances with him, considering, like Ryan said, everyone thought we didn't think he'd be a starter, like to start the year at least, right? I assumed he was going to still be in that same swingman role that he was in 23, where he played in 29 games and made 10 starts. And
which is a fine role for him.
Which is honestly, it's the preferred role if you're asking me. But because of injuries, he was forced to be a starter. And with Ben Brown and Cade Horton and Jordan Wicks being hurt, essentially, Horton and Wicks more than Brown. At least Brown was able to pitch those first 2 months of the year. With those guys being hurt, it kind of forced the Cubs to have to start him the entire season. Mm-hmm. So that's why I don't hate that you guys gave him a B-, because he was forced into a role that I don't even think the Cubs wanted to use him in, but because of the circumstances, they had to. And I think he excelled in that role, considering the expectations entering the season. With that said, though, I'm giving him a C+, because despite that, he wasn't better than 2023, and he wasn't like significantly worse either. He was an average player. But to me, if he puts up a season like that and the Cubs are a little bit more healthy, you're probably looking at him in a completely different realm, because maybe he doesn't make 29 starts, So That's why, to me, he gets a C+, because I don't think he wasn't bad. He had some bad stretches for sure. Like, you could tell once he reached that 100 inning mark and went over his career high in innings, you could see that he was starting to fade. But for the year, like Ryan said, he had an expected ERA of 4.97. His FIP was 4.64. And his K rate, it's never been there. And then something that I've always hit home on this entire season related to him is that he just couldn't go deeper into games. And sure, as a 4 or 5 starter, I guess that's okay in this modern era that we're playing in. At the same time, though, they needed him to go deeper in some games, and he just couldn't do it. Now, he had some good games too. And again, I don't think the team is where it's at in April and May without him, but I look at it and I'm like, I wish I could give him a better grade, because if the team was a little bit more healthier and maybe some guys didn't slump, maybe if the Cubs had a closer, he would be getting more credit. Like, all I can say is, to me, he was an average player in 2024. I don't think it was better than 2023, and I don't think he was the reason they missed the playoffs either. So that's why he gets a C+ from me.
I think all reasonable grades.
And
if you disagree, I don't agree with you.
No, I think like it's kind of like when we talked with like Morel all season, when he like had all these great expected numbers and like wasn't getting results, and we were like, well, after 2 months of that, it's like at some point your results are your results, right? Like, we're literally at the point where Javier Assad's results are his results. Like, there's no more 2024 games to play for him. Like, his results are his results right now. And overall, he exceeded what I expected of him. I didn't give him nearly enough credit for being able to do, like, I wouldn't have given him nearly enough credit in March and April to end up doing what he did over the season. And so that's a credit to him for going out there many times, giving the team a chance to win just by pitching 5 innings or whatever, keeping it close, and filling in when they really needed a guy to fill in well and be in that rotation long-term over the long haul. Credit to him for doing that, because I wouldn't have given him that benefit of the doubt going into the season. And that's why my grade's a little bit higher than Cody's. Just I put a lot of stock for him, and he really exceeded what I expected of him going into the year.
I don't know what William's saying. Like, I'm not blaming other players on the team for giving a C+. Like, all I was saying is that if the results from other players, other pitchers like Alzolay, if he's able to get that save, maybe his numbers, maybe he has a few more wins on the record. You know what I mean? Something like that.
Like if they would have used Hendricks differently, which I hard time all season.
I just think all I'm saying is that he wasn't bad. He wasn't great. He was average. You felt like every day, every 5th day he went out there, he'd give you 4 to 5 innings, and sometimes he'd go 6. And for a number 4 or number 5 starter, considering the depth that they had for most of the time he was out there, like, you take that, especially whenever, again, I think he's better in the swingman role. So, like, he started 10 games in 2023. If he starts anywhere from 10 to 15 games in 2025 and the rotation's a little bit healthier, I think that his numbers are going to look more like 2023 than they did this year. There were good numbers this year. There were also bad numbers. Like Ryan said, the expected stats weren't great.
Yeah, and the
defense actually saved him plenty of times.
So don't expect maybe the same numbers next year necessarily, just because you saw some pretty good performance. By the way, James is saying, look at his career numbers. We're not talking about career numbers. We're talking about just this season. But I do agree with you when you say the results for $755K.
Yeah.
I mean, you're getting a pretty good bargain. I mean, I know Ryan will tell you this. I think it sure seems like Craig Counsell, he earned Craig Counsell's trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a guy that he could send out there to get, even if it's just 4 or 5 innings, he could get you through half the game and give you at least a gutty performance. Sometimes he didn't have his best stuff, but he'd get you through as much as he could. He's not a perfect pitcher, but that's a valuable pitcher at times.
No, listen to Craig Counsell talk about Assad, especially the last few weeks of the season, and he was just really impressed with what Assad did. And I think one of the things he would talk about, Craig Counsell, was like he gave up base runners. Like there were definitely times where guys, he'd run into traffic a couple times in a game, but he just seemed to like get out of it. He just seemed to make the pitch when he needed to make the pitch, and that's part of that is probably good fortune too, right? Like stuff like that tends to even out long term as well. But like being able to make the right pitch when you need to get the pitch and get the outs, like your defense probably plays a part in that. Good fortune plays a part in that. Like it's not necessarily all up to Assad, but it's also like that was something that impressed Craig Counsell was when he needed to make that pitch. It seemed like he generally delivered on making that pitch and getting himself out of situations he got himself in. And I think that's part of why Craig Counsell did really like having him in the rotation this year. Again, like he wasn't Justin Steele, Shota Imanaga level, but he was a guy that Craig Counsell like was able to trust in that rotation throughout the season and liked having him in the rotation.
Yeah, it's a good point that he was like incredible with runners on base. His numbers were significantly like
clutch.
They were like elite with runners on base.
I want to go look.
Pitch better with runners on base.
Yeah. So
all right, we're gonna get here. We go. This is what you've been waiting for. Pete Crow-Armstrong. We saved the back quarter of the podcast here, the last 20 minutes or so. Pete Crow-Armstrong. I did the same thing. I went bold again. I said, you know what? I'm not going to look up his WAR. I'm not going to look up his WRC plus. I'm not going to look up his fielding percentage. I'm going to give you what my eyeballs saw. And early on, what I saw was what I saw at the end of last season. Guy that was a little overwhelmed, right? But we saw progression, and we saw him start to get better. And all of a sudden it went from, there were a lot of times where he'd have an impact on a game still, and it was positive, but it was, he beat out two dribblers, or he'd be he wasn't hitting the ball hard. But then all of a sudden you started getting to games where he started to drive the ball, and you saw the defense, and you saw the base running. And I look at Pete Crow-Armstrong's full rookie season as a stock, okay? It's not what Theo's talking about. He used to say it's not linear. I'm giving him a B because in a rookie season, I want progress out of my number one rookie. There's no question we saw it. Was it a straight line? No. There were peaks. There were weeks that were dips. There was another short peak. Then there was a dip. Then there was a bigger peak. And you can't live and die with every week when you're talking about a rookie like that. So I'm just looking at where did the line start at the season and where did it end at? And don't just judge it for what you saw in September. You have to look at the whole thing. So that's why I say B. Does he have room for progress? Wow, yeah, that potential is there for him, as Cody keeps saying, to maybe, possibly be their superstar player, one of their superstar players. I think you need multiple superstar players. There's also the potential going into next season that you get more of the same because he's a young guy.
He's 23? No.
22.
He's 22?
Next year will be 23.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give him a B. I was happy with his rookie season. I'm not the person that's going to sit here and go gaga and say he's your center fielder for the next 10 years. He's untradeable. He's the most talented player we've ever had. Slow down. There were great moments. He has a different skill set than almost any center fielder that's out there. He's a different player. Are there things that I like and don't like? Yeah. In general, I'll give him a B. I'm not going to give him an A. I'm not going to just say he's average because there's nothing average about the guy. There's no question he can be far beyond average.
Yeah.
But he played, for me, if I average it all out, to a B. Maybe some people think that's too high. Maybe some will say too low. That's my grade.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to say that me and the Godfather finally agree on a grade this offseason. Yeah, B- is what I gave PCA. Not much different than your B, obviously. Like it's he's right in that B range. The defense and the base running that we saw, like that gave him just like the floor of a C for me. Like regardless of offense, like the Gold Glove caliber defense, the elite base running skills. Like you look at his StatCast and like 98th percentile range, like outs above average, 98th percentile arm value, which I was actually a little surprised at how good his arm was, how strong his arm was. Like that was pretty good because he was 95th percentile in arm strength and then 99th percentile in sprint speed. Like those are all things that PCA, like we knew he had in his bag coming in, and he really showed us like, okay, like we were right to be confident in those couple areas of his game. The offense is always going to be, to me, like kind of what what was really the changing of the grade for me, because I mean, the first 3 months he was back up, things didn't look very good. Like, it was like April 25th or whatever was the day he came back up through like July 26th. The numbers were
Braggs jumped off the ship, if I remember correctly.
He did.
Oh, yeah, sounds about right.
He did.
Yeah, so he had, from his season debut, whatever day that was, like 24th of April, 25th of April, he was hitting 180 through July 26th. He was hitting 180 with a 523 OPS and a 48 WRC plus. Like, if you would have, like, offensively, like, very clearly an F grade, right, at that point in the season, which would have hurt his grade for sure. He found a way, and, you know, talking to Dustin Kelly, like, right around that time, they had reintroduced a hitting drill, a leg kick drill that they had kind of used during the offseason in Arizona. Reintroduced that during that time just as a drill, and then, you know, PCA was like, you know, I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good doing this. I feel really good doing this. And so they, as a group, decided to, like, try it in games, see how it goes. And it felt like we saw an immediate difference in what he was at the plate. Like, it felt like he would the inside sliders, low and inside, that he just seemed to always swing and miss at. Seemed like he wasn't even, like, chasing those anymore. He was barreling the ball more. He was hitting it to center field and opposite field a little bit more. Like, it seemed as like he flipped the switch really quickly. And you go from there through the end of the season, July 27th through the end of the season, he ended up hitting 289 with an 806 OPS and a 123 WRC plus. Superstar numbers? No. But were they numbers that completely flipped the script on what he was the first 3 months of the year? Absolutely. And there was a little, like, 12-game slump towards the end of the year, right? Like, where he wasn't hitting very well either. And I think that's part of, like, the
growth.
Well, not even just the growth, but just, like, the pitchers adjusting to him, like, just part of the natural, like, continuing chess game of baseball, of continuing to have to adjust to pitching, and they adjust back, and, you know, all that stuff. But he had really good numbers over the last 2 months of the season. Numbers that really, you look at his end of season numbers, I think he had like an 89 or 88 WRC plus, something like that. Like, that 2 month stretch really brought his offense out of the depths that it was at. Because I remember coming off of last season, his brief debut, right? Like 19 plate appearances, and people were, like, really concerned about him. And the first 3 months, like, validated those concerns in a way. Not like I was still confident he'd figure out at this level. It was just going to take time. But like, if anyone that was concerned about September last year, the first 3 months validated those concerns in their eyes. He figured it out. He looked a lot more like a really, really good offensive player for this team, on top of the defense, on top of the base running, on top of the speed, on top of everything else he provides. Obviously, you can't measure passion and energy and stuff that he provides as well. That all plays a part in it. No, you can't discount the first 3 months that he had offensively, and that's why I'm at a B-. But the things that I saw, and especially as Luke mentioned, the growth, it makes me, like, really, I think the Cubs should be really excited about their future with PCA. Like, he has to go out and prove it. Obviously, he's still young, but I think they should be pretty excited about what they have in PCA.
Admittedly, when we first brought him up, when you threw it in when you texted the group chat last night, I was like, first reaction was like C+, and then I was like, do I really want all these random bots to come at me on a Tuesday or whatever day? And I was like, nah, I'll give him a B-, because you have to factor in expectations. You have to factor in the fact that he's a rookie. You got to factor in, you know, all these things that you guys have already said regarding, you know, the questions on offense and the fact that his defense is so elite that if you were just grading him on defense, he'd get an A, right? So the offense, that's why immediately my first thought was C+, because, like, the defense was so great, but the offense outside of August really was not great. You know what I mean? You know, you were talking about his offense. In August, he hit 314, had a 375 on base and a 558 slugging percentage with a 933 OPS, 154 WRC plus. He had a 389 weighted on base average. All right. But then in September, WRC plus down to 92, 677 OPS. He did hit 256, which is significantly better than what he did in June and July. In June, he hit 145, and in July, he hit 197.
Well, and like I said, I think that September, that last 12 games of September, because I think it was July 26th through September 16th or something like that. But that's, if you look at where the numbers started dropping off, that was the cutoff. So it was a good 6 weeks of games where he was hitting very well.
That's fair. Yeah. And believe me, during those 6 weeks, I was having the time of my life. It was probably my favorite part of the entire season, was watching PCA be as awesome as he was in August and through mid-September. So, but just on the basis of it, the offense really wasn't there all season except for in August. But his defense is so good and so great, and the fact that I don't even know what expectations for him were entering the year. He was a positive for the team this year. He was a guy that I think that in 2025, he could emerge into that star player that we all know the Cubs desperately need. Like Luke said, I'm not saying that he's untradeable. I'm not saying that he's your center fielder for the next 10 years, but if he continues to develop in the positive direction, he's a guy that I think can play center field for the Cubs for the next 6-7 years. Yeah. There's a lot to like there. There's a lot to be excited about with him. I love the passion, the emotion, he's going to have 10,000 different GIFs on Twitter or wherever that you can put out there. It's so crazy that he was part of the Javi Baez trade because he resembles so much of what Javi Baez was and why he was a fan favorite. So yeah, there is a lot to like, but yeah, because I think he was a better player by the end of the year. That's why I ended up giving him a B-. The defense was that good, and the base running, he can be a little over aggressive sometimes, but that's because he has 99% sprint speed and thinks he's Flash, I guess. But he's a rookie, and so it's you have to factor that in. And so yeah, will I have higher expectations in 2025? Absolutely. And if he doesn't become a more consistent offensive player, he's probably going to be ranging around in that C+ area for me. As long as the defense continues to be great, that's probably what he would be for me. But obviously he's got to take steps in 2025 offensively to really become a cornerstone for the Cubs moving forward. So overall, though, I am very excited about him heading into 25.
Yeah, I don't want to take away his, like you were talking about, is he overly aggressive sometimes? Mm-hmm. Yes, on the base paths. Yes, sometimes in the outfield, but I don't want to take away that aggressiveness. And I think the Javi comp in Javi's best moments is the same thing Joe Madden used to say. Sometimes you have to live with the over-aggressiveness because that's who the player is. Yeah. Now, I don't want him to fall into the same path that Javi went on just because he has crazy natural talents. I want him to hone those skills. So next year, I think it was Corey got all upset that somebody said, hey, slow down a little bit in the outfield. And I'm not saying I don't want him to go chase every ball, but if Ian Happ is standing underneath the ball and not moving, you don't have to dive to go get it because the easier play is and those things will come naturally to him, feeling out where the teammates are at, what the game is like. But I love that energy right now. And it was a rookie season. I can't believe I'm going to say it. You guys are right. It's a B-. B's probably a little too optimistic. But if I want to be optimistic about almost anyone on this team moving forward,
it's PCA.
He's the guy you want to hang your hat on. Like Shota too, all of that. But if you're looking at the Cubs' future and you're going to say, you know what, I saw this advancement and from where it was, and it makes me think that we may have a position with a really good player moving forward. He checks all the boxes so far. Yeah. There was some really bad stuff. I'm not forgetting any of it. And I'm not saying it won't return at the beginning of next season. But overall, there was progress, and that's what they want. They told the guy not to even worry about offense.
Yeah.
And I think that's where he made the biggest progress, obviously.
Offensively. Yeah, it was hard to make progress on his defense and base running because he was so good at those.
But I still think there is room.
No, there is for sure. And Craig Counsell said that at the end of the season. There is still room for improvement, especially defensively. I don't remember exactly what Craig Counsell said, but I think it was I think he kind of was like, well, I would like to see him when a ball hits his glove, catch it more. Something along those lines. I don't remember exactly what he said, but there was a point where he's like, there is still improvement for PCA defensively. As awesome as he is out there, there is still ways for him to improve there. So you want to see the all-around improvement, but specifically offensively. And I think the point that you want to hammer home with him about is the dude played the entire season at 22 years old. Like Craig Counsell said it as far back as spring training, like he would be a college-age senior right now. And he's getting most of his development at the major league level when he could realistically be doing it in AAA. He did for the first few weeks, but he was up pretty quickly. And I remember like Mike Talkman talking about him, like relative to what PCA had. He had like 4 years of college and like 1,200 minor league at-bats or something before he got his shot. Pete Crow-Armstrong was on a much faster trajectory for it, and not just the progress that he made, but the willingness for a young guy like that to accept the coaching, to make the adjustments that needed to be made, and for the results to come. Like, I think we already know, like, PCA has a really good head on his shoulders. This season felt like a pretty good example of the kind of mentality he has about getting better and improving, because he did have a lot of development at the big league level, which is hard, and he showed he's able to do it.
James in the chat, he sent multiple things basically shitting on Craig Counsell because he didn't ever put PCA in the leadoff spot. And like, I think in August I would have, I think I would have considered at least like trying it out, or maybe even in September after some of those, after you saw the bigger sample size. He certainly didn't deserve to be up there leading off the June or July. I do think in 25, like if all things go well for him, though, he is somewhere near the top of your lineup. I really like Ian Happ as the leadoff guy, considering the era that we're playing baseball in now. And if this was like 15 years ago, I would obviously say like Pete Crow-Armstrong. But I think that if his offense continues to progress like it did the last 2 months of the year, then he can certainly make the case to get more at bats. And I think if you have a guy like him setting the table for Seiya and Paredes, and maybe they trade for someone I'm not even thinking about because I've already given up on Soto, but whoever it is, like that's a guy, like we saw it in August, like he was such a lightning rod and tone setter for an inning. If he let off an inning, or he caused so much chaos. He bunt how many we should set the line in April or in March next year. Come up with a number of how many bunt singles this guy's gonna get. You know what I mean? Like I think that he certainly is going to be their future leadoff hitter, but I totally understand why he wasn't there this year.
No, it was again B- grade is what kind of where we all fell at, but it wasn't. It was a year that really excited you about what the Cubs have in this guy moving forward. I'll say the Cubs should absolutely be excited in what they have with PCA.
It won't be the last time we talk about Pete Crow-Armstrong this offseason. We will continue our grades tomorrow. The live show again at 11:30 for those of you doing the live YouTube chat. Everybody that was in there today, appreciate all your comments. Make sure you hit the like button on the way out. Subscribe to the CHGO Sports YouTube page while you're at it. And don't forget, always be a diehard, because you can get great deals and stuff for that as well. Appreciate all of you. We'll see you at 11:30 for more grades. Thanks for checking out the CHGO Cubs podcast. Until tomorrow, thanks for watching, and fly the W.
We all silly like the mayor.